Are you recording?
Yep, I am Oh, am I? Yep, I am.
Okay. So, now we know.
Oh, wait.
What?
Laura Lynn's back. Everybody, Laura Lynn's back. Yay! Laura Lynn had some spare time, and so she said she could come and do a podcast with me. Yay! Okay, go ahead, Laura Lynn.
Okay, thank you for that. Welcome back. A very warm introduction. Okay, now we know how much you love
Drama.
church.
Oh! I know, drama. Drama was my first answer.
No, church. Okay.
Oh, tell me what you got to tell me about church. This would be interesting.
You're going to love this. Okay. So, what kind of information do you think, like when you go and you want to join a church, what kind of information do you think you give a church would ask of you?
I would think to attend a church, nothing. But to join a church, I would think, I was raised Baptist, which was adult baptism only. Once saved, always saved theology, which I later found out was rare. So for me, I would, to be honest with you, if you wanted to join a church the Baptist way, you just went up during altar call. If y'all Baptists, you know what altar call is. Do you know what altar call is?
That's when you go up and say the prayer and you're saved, right?
Baptist altar call, I don't know about other churches, but Baptist altar call, they would sing like Amazing Grace or I Surrender All, some sappy song to make you feel guilty that you're alive.
Right.
And
all Baptists are going to hell.
Then that's where you would typically get saved. Most Baptists get saved on Sunday because the altar call, the sappy songs make you feel guilty. You know, getting up early, lack of sleep, that'll do it.
Lack of sleep.
So that's what altar call is.
Okay.
You know, you go up, you get saved, or you rededicate your life, or if you're backslidden. Again, once you're saved, you're always saved. They believe in eternal security. So you can only be backslidden or not saved.
Okay.
And so that's our altar call. What was your question? I can't remember. What was it?
If you're deciding to join a church, what questions do you think they would ask you?
Okay, so from my experience of the altar call is typically also when I'm going to forget again, when you go up to join the church also.
Okay.
And
So you become a member at that time?
Well, Baptists are jacked up people, just like other religions are jacked up. You have to be voted in.
Really?
That's jacked up. But everybody always gets voted in. Nobody doesn't vote them in. I've never seen anybody
That's like an
not.
episode of Survivor.
Yeah.
You get voted off the island, or if you're a Baptist, you get voted into the church.
Yeah. I've never seen anybody not get voted in. I've never seen it happen. Never.
Wow.
So, as far as I know, they might, depending on the pastor, might ask you if you're saved.
Okay.
Because if you're not saved, you can't join a church.
Okay.
So they might ask you if you're saved, and I think to join the church, you might also have to be baptized.
Okay.
But they only baptize adults, and so children can't join.
Right. Because
So
it has to be a free will, and they say children really don't understand yet and can't actually give their free will because they don't have enough information.
Right. So, so go ahead. What were you going to say?
Okay. So, I attended a few masses at Catholic. Okay. And so they gave me an intake interview.
Oh, Catholics. Oh, that just reminded, Catholics.
They gave me an intake interview, and they asked me my name, my father's name, my mother's maiden name, what street I grew up on as a child. All of your bank security questions they asked me. I wasn't honest about it, but they asked me because I'm like, I don't know these people, and they're putting this down on a piece of paper that could go into anybody's hands. And I'm like, I don't want them to have this information. I don't want to join their church. And, oh, are you serious?
Like, why did
So they could steal your identity.
Exactly, yeah.
Anybody in that church could find that piece of paper in your file or hack into if they put it in their computer, they could hack into their computer system. Anybody could hack into their church security system in their computer and get all this information on all their members, and all those identities could be stolen.
Well, Jude, with all
That's not secure.
with all that information, the person putting it in might be lured into, like, it might just be temptation to take this information and do bad stuff. I mean, because you got the ultimate power.
If you wanted to steal identities, go join the Catholic Church and be the secretary. You have access to all that information.
Or the priest. You're the secretary or the priest.
Secretary would be easier to do.
Yeah.
Priest would be hard.
Yeah.
And somebody that's crooked and wants to steal identities, they're not going to go through all the work to be a priest.
That's true. You do have to go through a lot more to be a priest.
But I could not believe that. They wanted my lineage. They asked me if I had been married before, and I told them. And they told me that I had to get an annulment through the church if I wanted to be a member. I said, that's okay, hon, I'm just visiting.
And you were just visiting, and they said?
Yeah.
See, I don't think the only time I ever visited a Catholic church was like, no, I take that back.
Of course, I visited 3 times in a row.
Okay, I got to take back. Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead, keep talking.
She's letting her cat out. She's got to let the kitty cat out.
Go ahead, man.
So yeah, I visited like 4 times. So yeah, I started to be a regular.
Okay, yeah, that might have been it, because I only went like one time during Christmas, like Christmas Eve Mass, and then I think one time during a funeral or a wedding.
What did you think about that? They're so ritualistic.
I liked it, but that's because Baptists have 0 ritual. But I liked all the, they had the little swingy thing with
Incense,
the incense. Yeah, and I liked it. I thought it was, I would have probably hate to sit there all that. But the thing is, their services were much shorter than Baptist services.
They're an hour.
And they didn't proselytize like Baptists proselytize. I mean, you could be having a potluck dinner and they'll preach a sermon and proselytize to you, and you're like, I want to eat, okay? But yeah, I thought it was pretty neat.
It is pretty.
But my partner, do you want me to tell you my well, it's not my personal experience, but my experience through my partner?
Yes.
Because we lived together at this time.
Yes.
He was divorced by the time we cohabitated, and he had been divorced, I don't know, by 5 years, so I don't know. But then I guess his ex-wife decided to get remarried. Well, he was married in the church, the Catholic church.
Oh.
He was Lutheran, which is just basically, if y'all know the Lutheran
It's like
background, Martin Luther seceded from the Catholic Church and
it's a sidestep of Catholicism.
So they have a lot of the rituals and stuff that the Catholics do. So now about this marriage thing, I don't know, but like all this,
Gotta get
paperwork and all this the systematic organization thing that you had to go through. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I was supposed to submit why I got a divorce, and if it was a good enough reason, they would annul it. And if it wasn't a good enough reason, then I couldn't be a member of their church. I'm like, I'm just visiting.
Right. Well, get this.
I'm heathen. I'm staying heathen. I'm just visiting.
Well, okay, so he
I'm not going to denounce my gods in favor of you people.
well, okay, so what why were you interested in the ritual of the church? Were you interested in learning about, like, were you thinking about maybe one day joining the church, or were you just like, I got nothing better to do?
No, with being a heathen, we don't have anything organized. We don't have someplace, a sacred ground to go to, a sacred space to go to and pray.
Okay, so you were using that as just a place to
Yeah.
congregate and pray and okay.
Yes.
Well, see, okay, my partner, I gotta finish. I just wanted to ask you that because I was just wondering. But my partner, we were living together, and we had been, I don't know, living together maybe 6 months. And he got this letter in the mail from the church saying that his wife wanted to get remarried, and they asked him all these intrusive questions. Like,
They're very intrusive.
how long was your marriage to this person? Did you consummate the marriage? I think they even asked how many times. I mean, it was
Wow.
just really gross. Like, did they legally get married? Did they get divorced according to the church, which meant, going in front of the, whatever. Did they get counseling? Just all this stuff. Have they been remarried? Had my partner been remarried since then? And just he never answered it. He said he never answered it, and I said I wouldn't either.
Right.
Even if I was Catholic, that's none of their business.
Yup.
And so, and I mean, they had lines. These were like essay questions. These were not yes or no questions.
Wow.
And so, he just threw it away.
Good.
And so I said, I didn't advise him one way. I think he might have asked me. I said I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm Baptist. I don't do that crap.
Yeah.
And I mean, like with Baptists, of course they don't want you to get divorced, but I mean, if you get divorced, none of their business.
That's good.
It's like, keep it between y'all, don't bring it here.
Yeah, keep your drama at home.
Right, that's the only thing that, it's basically just keep your drama out of the church. We don't want splitting of church
Right.
because of that. And so, as a matter of fact, my parents divorced. My mom started going to a different church, a different Baptist church. That's when we started going to Warren Missionary Baptist Church, and my dad stayed at Gideon.
Okay.
And my dad was a song leader at Gideon.
Okay.
And so they did it the right way. Well, at
Right.
least my mom did it the right way.
Yeah.
She just, she didn't want to, even though that was her church for many years, she's like, I don't want to bring this all here. We'll just go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And she went with somebody else who had been a member of Gideon, and I think they changed churches just because they moved.
Okay.
And so she started going to that church.
All right.
The Warren Mission, and that's when we started going there.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, none of that was,
But she didn't have to give them her full lineage with her father's name and her mother's maiden name and the street she lived on as a child.
None of that. If she had to answer any questions, it's, are you saved? Have you been baptized? That's the only questions if she had any questions.
They asked me if I had been saved, which a long time ago I had been. And they asked me if I was baptized, and a long time ago I had been. And they said, do you have any certificate of baptism? And I said, no. And they said, we have to rebaptize you.
Yeah, see, we don't get certificates of baptism.
We don't get certificates of baptism. No, we don't. So I'm just like, no.
Okay, we're almost to the halfway point. What denominations of churches have you gone to? That's a question. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And did they ask for your mother's maiden name?
When you got baptized, did you get a certificate of baptism? I never even heard of that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. Did you have to give them all your banking security answers?
Yeah, and divorce. What was the divorce? Did they get all up in your business about divorce, or did they let you just do your thing? I never heard of, other than the Catholic Church, I've never heard of anybody getting all up in your business
It's
about that stuff.
crazy.
Like if you're cohabitating, I never heard of any church getting up in your business talking to you about that. Maybe
Oh,
in years
cohabitating.
past, but-
Cohabitating? No, not years past. I have a story that during the time I was married, my first marriage, I was going to a church. Okay, this was in 2002. I was going to a church. I had been going there for like 5 years straight. Twice a week, Wednesdays and Sundays, I was going there religiously. And finally, they started doing the religious classes to become a member to that, because you had to go through classes. I think it was like a 6-week or 8-week class, or maybe 10.
Do you remember what denomination it was?
It was a non-denominational Christian church.
Okay.
And so we had to do the classes, but before that, for 5 years, I had been involved. I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to do. I was doing my tithing. I was involved in the photography ministry. I was involved in the choir. All of that. I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing. And it got to be, I was 2 membership classes away from becoming a member.
Okay. Keep talking. I'm going to plug this.
Okay. I was 2 classes away from becoming a member. And the minister pulled me aside after one of the classes and asked me, he says, there's a rumor that you're living with a man.
I think you might have told me this a while ago. Did you say, yeah, my husband?
No, I asked him because I thought this was peculiar. Why is he confronting me by himself about a rumor? If he was following church procedure, he should have at least confronted me with one other board member witness.
Well, see, now that you mention it that way, I would have thought, oh my gosh, is this going to lead to rape?
So he was, I was thoughting that it was a little strange that he was accusing me solo.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, I said, would it make a difference if I told you I was married to the man? Because I was living with my husband, my
Right.
legally married husband. I was living with my husband. And he said, no, I can't have rumors in my church. You're not welcome to be involved in this church like you have been.
Just because you were, because I have been living in sin with many people, and I never had that issue.
He said I couldn't be there because he couldn't have rumors in his church.
But people knew I was living in sin.
He said I couldn't be there because there were rumors about me.
But everybody knew I was living in sin. We're just talking about it out in the open.
He got rid of me because it was easier to get rid of me than to confront the person spreading rumors.
But who cares if you were living in sin? We're all living in sin. In one way or another. I don't get it. That to me, that just makes
He
it.
confronted the wrong person. He
Well, I
should
know
have
he
been
would.
confronted the person that's spreading rumors.
Yeah, but still, I don't understand why it even makes a difference if you were cohabitating with somebody you weren't married. That to me just seems so arcane, like something that would happen in the 1850s.
So I left. The membership classes were before services, so I left after that membership class.
So what year was that?
2002.
So that was modern.
Yeah, that was modern times. I was heartbroken.
Jeez,
I had my heart
Louise.
set on it. I was heartbroken. I was going to become Christian and everything else. I was born and raised heathen. My mother was heathen. My mother's side of the family was all heathen. My father was Baptist. And any time that we did anything slightly wild, he would say, that's the heathen from your mother's side coming out in you. So he didn't like that my mother was that. But that's okay. But so yeah, then that's when I decided I was going to go back to being heathen. And that's when I decided to become an ordained minister and have my own. I started a study group, and was teaching heathenism. teaching tarot reading, rune reading, and things like that.
Okay, so your heathen is different than the heathen that I was raised with. What to me, like heathen was kind of an obscure word.
It's a derogatory term.
Well, yeah, it's a derogatory term, but it's obscure. In the Baptist, it's obscure. It means non-Christian, and it could mean it's pretty obscure. They never really, identified, but it meant anything from. It could mean anything from witchcraft, depending on who's using the term. Witchcraft, atheist, agnostic, just all around non-Christian. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
so what does heathen mean to you? How are you using the word?
Heathen to me means believing in the Nordic gods, the Nordic pantheon,
Okay.
which is the Odin and the Thor and the Freya and Frey and all of those.
Okay. So you do understand, though, that some people use heathen in a different way.
Yeah, they use that along with
Okay.
pagan, and pagan actually means like people that live on the fringes or the country people, the country folk. So that was the original meaning of pagan.
Okay.
So yeah, heathen, a lot of people use that as a derogatory term to mean the uncivilized.
Okay. Yeah, see, growing up, it meant anybody, depending on who used it, basically, it could be anybody who wasn't Christian. But some people directly meant it to be, atheist, or some people directly meant it to be agnostic, some directly meant it to be witchcraft, some direct meant it to be anything that wasn't Christian.
Right.
And some people just use it, probably didn't even know what it meant. And
Yeah.
now we're using it just to mean, like, I don't know what this means, but I'm going to say.
Somebody that runs around like a little.
They might consider themselves Christian, but they're not acting Christian.
Right.
Could be,
And I've even recently seen people, adult parents, take pictures, video of their children and post it on Facebook while their children are having a sugar overload and they're running around hyperactive. And the mother was saying, "Look at my little heathens running around."
I've heard terms like that. Yeah, they just mean they're wild. They're
Yeah, they mean-
hyperactive.
And I'm just
Yeah.
like, she used that derogatory.
See, to me, I don't think that's as derogatory. I think that just means like.
She meant it derogatory.
Okay, well, the way I've heard it, it's just like, oh, look at these little, silly gooses, or that's the way I've heard parents call their kids heathen, and I always took it as.
My father always used it derogatory towards us. If we were running around with bare feet, jumping in the mud or something like that, playing in the mud, chasing chickens.
See, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not getting it, but I
He'd
don't.
say, "That's the little heathens. That's the heathen in you coming out from your mother's side."
See, if somebody said that, I don't think I'd take it derogatory. I think they just meant they're silly gooses. So maybe I'm just not getting something.
Maybe. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but
Or maybe you're taking it personally because.
because I am heathen.
Right, and maybe you're saying, like I take the R word personally. Kathy from the library director, I'm going to call her out, put her on blast, because she said the R word in a derogatory way. Meaning it as derogatory, not meaning it as silly goose. She called somebody the R word because they did something that she considered wrong.
I don't know what an R word is.
Developmentally disabled?
Oh, so she called him a tard.
Yeah. And I don't like that word either.
Right.
Because it's
See, now,
the beginning.
because I don't have a personal experience with that, I don't take that as a derogatory slip, whereas you do.
See, and that might be because I was diagnosed.
Right. So it's personal to you, just like heathen is personal to me.
Yeah. But see, if I knew somebody was offended by it, I wouldn't use that word,
Right.
you know.
And I know that it's a derogatory term. I used to I used to use that word when someone was being silly and goofy, and I would say, oh, they're being a tard. I would say, stop being retarded. Until I was taught better. I was taught, that's kind of like using a racial slur.
Yeah.
It's very offensive to people. And you should just shut your mouth.
Well, see, the thing is like, the way I say it, my diagnosis is not your insult.
Right.
Is what I say. Like, to say something like being black is something to be ashamed of. Like using the N-word. Like, you're being black is something to be ashamed of. Or being black, even if you're not, being black is something to be ashamed of if you're using that as a pejorative. And it's like, there's nothing to be ashamed of.
There's nothing they can do about that.
There's nothing to be ashamed about. Just like there's nothing to be ashamed about being white. There's nothing ashamed about for being, having blonde hair. There's nothing shameful about having brown eyes. We're going to go back to this, features. There's nothing to be ashamed about. There's nothing. But people will use it as a pejorative.
Right.
And so that it's insinuating that having that condition is something to be ashamed about. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And I know a lot of people don't, if they're not part of that community, they may not realize how hurtful that is.
And with a lot of the kids, the teenagers, because I used to use it when I was a teenager, because other teenagers were using it, and so
you just don't even realize.
You don't even know.
You don't even know.
So you're just copying what they do.
Like my daughter used the word mulatto, and I had to correct her on that. I says that's a term at one time that meant something, but became a pejorative. And so it's no longer used because it's now connotated as a pejorative.
Right.
Just like the Confederate flag at one time didn't mean what it means now. Right. And there were people, I remember there were people covered, what was it, like the Purple Gang or something? A diverse group of people who used to be in, like, I believe it was Chicago, who used to, one of their symbols was a Confederate flag, but, and there were people of all races and all genders in this group. And they used to do things like help the community. They started school lunches in Chicago, and it spread from there. That's why we now have school lunches. And free school lunches. And they did all sorts of community activism that eventually spread across the nation. And like I said, one of their symbols was the Confederate flag, and it stood for, like, the solidarity, unification. But it turned out to mean something totally different. And even people of that, now that they're older, of that gang was saying we would not use that symbol now because now it means something different.
Right. Just like the word gay used to mean happy.
Yeah.
Now it means something different. It means something very different.
Yeah. And some words went from being bad to being good.
Yeah.
Like the B word. A lot of people use it in like a friendly tone, or a goofy tone. Whereas, but when I was a kid, it was used. You use that as a slander.
Yeah.
You
Instead of saying
never
hi,
said-
be old.
Right. Yeah. It was. Now it's kind of used, kind of silly, kind of funny, kind of unifying.
It's a greeting now, where before it used to be derogatory.
Yeah. I still don't like to use the word because of the way I was raised. I have that negative connotation to it.
Right. I don't use it either.
Because, and it's when we talk negative, we use feminine terms. We already talked about this.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. Let's use masculine terms
in the negative.
In the negative, yeah. Okay, so we've done that. Okay, we are done. Goodbye.